This is our first look at the HBX 16889. It's a 16 scale RC pickup truck. And here we go, we got no foam in the wheels. These are not oil-filled shocks. This vehicle is running about $75-ish. I picked this up for $73 on sale, shipped after tax and everything. It does come with a wheelie bar. You do have to put that on by yourself. All it takes is just these 4 screws right here, and then 2 screws underneath the cab right there. And this does replace the bumper that normally comes with it. So if you do want to do, if you plan on doing a lot of jumps and just kind of a lot of high torque driving, then you can use one of these. Otherwise, you just put the bumper on. The bumper looks similar to this front one. It does come with these LED lights. They are fairly bright. It's daytime right now. It's about 11:06 a.m. and we can see it pretty clearly. So these aren't just regular LED diodes, or they are, but then instead of just a small circular bulb, they are rectangular, which looks kind of cool. It fills in that hole perfectly. And so we do have a plastic tub, and we'll go ahead and open this for you and take a look at that. So inside, my first impressions, I was actually very impressed with the thickness of this plastic tub and the depth. I'll take a look at that. What actually caught my first was the Kez Racing motor. So the diameter of this is 2435, and it is the diameter of an American US quarter. So it is very, very, very tiny. So we have tiny body clips, and that kind of gives you the size reference. This thing is really, really small. So in here we have you can't see it, but it's a 3900 kV, and it's operated by an ESC receiver combo. And this one here is rated at 2S. Basically it's 7.4 volts. I forget how many amps, but I'll go ahead and put that in the description below. And this is a lithium polymer alarm, which I found recently does not work very well with lithium ion batteries. For some reason, it prematurely sounds off. So I'll set it for 3.5 and it would go off at like 3.7. So it gets more annoying than anything else, but I still have that there. It does come with this 1500 milliamp lithium ion battery. And again, that's fairly small too. This is a brushless vehicle. We can tell by the 3 wires here as opposed to 2. Brushed vehicles will only have 2 wires connecting the motor to the ESC. First impressions, the receiver, I mean, they're all going to be made out of plastic, so you can't expect anything other than that. But the thickness of the plastic here seems actually pretty hefty. The plastic, it seems like the grip is kind of the high quality, and here it gets kind of hollow, as well as the top, which is kind of what we would expect with a $75 RC. Typically, I like to put the name of the RC vehicle on the on the transmitter, just because I'm expecting to have quite a few of these. And on the bottom, I'll put how many batteries and what type. That way, when I'm using rechargeables, I kind of know where everything is. So here on the top, we do have throttle trim, as well as the steering dual rate and the steering trim. So steering dual rate, if you're not familiar with that, basically it sets the endpoints. So it makes it so that, let me pull the vehicle back here. It makes it so that you can set how far the wheels turn in one direction. So a higher dual rate will allow it to angle more, or a tighter turning radius, and then a lower dual rate will basically make it not turn as much. So out of the box, this was, it's easy to change, it's just the dial here, but out of the box it was all the way, and what that did was it allowed or made the car do donuts when you're not really expecting or want it to. So I did turn that down a little bit. If you don't want to do donuts at all, then you go ahead and just turn this dial down quite a bit, and then the wheels won't turn nearly as much. And the one thing to note about the proportions of this is the steering wheel versus your grip versus like an adult hand. So I'm quite small. I'm like 5'7", and so you kind of guess how big my hands are. But basically, you can steer and drive with one hand. We're going to actually try that for just a moment here. So why would you want to do that? Sometimes you want to do that so you can film, and also it may just be easier. You may be holding your kid's hand, you may be holding other stuff in your hand. But generally that's kind of something people may want to know about. But yeah, you can do that. I find that actually if you hold it with the right hand, since your index finger is longer, you have a little bit more play in being able to maximize the turning in each direction. But it does get a little, it takes some getting used to use the throttle with your middle finger, as opposed to normally when you're doing it with your index finger and you're turning like this. So again, impressions is very good build quality. Just surprised by the size of the motor, the physical size, but it does have quite a bit of torque, and it does exactly what you're expecting to do for a $75 rig. So no disappointment as far as the performance. Again, impressed with the build quality. Love that it has a wheelie bar, and the remote's pretty good too. So I got mine at AliExpress. You can find these in other outlets like Banggood and stores of that nature. One thing to note is that the rear suspension is adjustable for stiffness and ride height, so there's 3 settings there. Out of the factory, as it is currently, it's actually mounted just on the middle hole. So we look at the front. The front, while the back has 3 holes, the front has 2. So here it's on the outer one. From the inside, we can take a little peek here. That's how that looks like. So you can adjust that for ride height, and again, stiffness, to see how you like your ride. While most budget RCs will come with a standard smaller red JST connector, you'll notice this one comes with the Deans, or also called a T connector. So this one is more common with some of the other higher end or larger size batteries. So you basically, if you already have a stock of batteries, chances are you either have XT connectors or Deans. One thing I was happy to see about this setup is, even though it has a 2-in-1 receiver ESC combination, generally the budget RCs will come with a 5-wire servo, which makes it harder to swap out components. So right now with 3-wire servo, you can keep this servo, and then you just swap this combination out for a separate ESC and your own receiver, and so that way you can use your own transmitter. But you will, if you're going to maintain the use of your headlights, you will need to either change the connection here, or you're just going to have to do without it. So I may just do without the headlights, but we'll see. One of the major factors for me when choosing an RC car is the availability of replacement parts. So this HBX in general does have a generous availability of backup parts, and so it is important that you'd have that in case anything breaks. Generally though, everything is pretty compact with these 1/16, 1/18 scale RC trucks and vehicles. So so just when it falls, if you're at a skate park or if you're running ramps, it tends not to break as easily just because there's not that much weight going onto it. So I'm not expecting to change out any of these parts. The dog bones here are metal already, and that was the weak point for the hailstorm that I had. So it's good to see that these ones are metal. This isn't a make or break for me, but one thing to note when you're looking and shopping for RC cars is just to know where the switch is located and whether or not that can be changed, or if you like where it's at. So when you can imagine, when you have the body on top, it's quite a reach to get to that switch. With some of the other RC cars like the Hailstorm, the switch is actually closer to the perimeter of it, so you're not really having to reach that far in. It's not that big of a deal, but it's just kind of something to note. I'm happy to report that when I checked out the hubs, all 4 corners were really tight. So there are some RC cars where people reported, not from HBX, but from WL Toys, where people reported that where they're not that tight from the factory and their wheels fall off and they lose their hubs. These are connected actually with Phillips screws, so which is not the norm for higher end hobby grade vehicles, but for some of these smaller budget ones, they do use the Phillips screws, which is not a big of a deal. I think people just like the hex hubs because they can change out the wheels with wheels that they already have. But if you're going to use this as is, it's really no big deal. So this HBX 16889 does not have adjustable turnbuckles, which is expected for this price range, but it's not something you can't easily get upgrade parts for. You can just buy an adjustable one. I don't have the measurements of these exact turnbuckles, but it's something that you can purchase if you want to. Out of the box, the alignment is actually really good. It doesn't have the toe out as you normally see with some of the budget RC cars, and so this does handle pretty well, and the alignment's pretty straight out of the box. which unfortunately was not the case with the Hailstorm, which did need some adjustment. With this one out of the box, it's pretty good to go. So the range cut out at about that distance, and as you can see, or not see, it's quite far away. You're about to see what happens when you try to run a speed test making a video using the transmitter one-handed. I don't think speed should be a major factor in determining whether you get a particular RC, especially a budget one, but we're gonna see what we got here. We got 22.3 miles an hour. So the HBX 16689, overall I think it is a good buy, good value. I paid $73 and some change on a special deal. Normally you can get these for about $75 to $80 shipped from AliExpress. That's where I got it. I did get this because I was kind of curious what the whole brushless fiasco was all about. And I have noticed the efficiency, it's a little bit less loud. It's a lot quieter actually. And when you're pulling the throttle, you're not going to need to pull it as much to go the same speed. So in that sense, I can sense the efficiency of a brushless motor. Would I pay $15, $20 more for brushless versus brushed? Borderline. I think I may. No regrets on this. I was very impressed with the quality of the plastic tub of the chassis itself, and it did perform a lot better than I would expect for a physically tiny motor. One great thing about this is that the servo is a 3-wire servo, which is pretty unusual for a budget RC car. And so for a 3-wire servo, if you were to want to replace this transmitter with your own transmitter, you can go ahead and just replace the ESC and the receiver without having to touch the servo. So a lot of times you have to replace all components. So it's good as is. If it's for a newbie or someone who's kind of adding to the collection, if you're a seasoned RC enthusiast and you're expecting this to be, you know, the next best thing, then you're going to be vastly disappointed. So one of the reasons I got this is because I noticed it had a wheelie bar, which you do add on your own, and I was expecting it to do wheelies off a straight line, but unfortunately it doesn't do that. So if you're expecting that, you're going to be very disappointed. So what the wheelie bar really is for kind of unstable conditions. If you're going off-road or you're landing kind of funny or taking off kind of funny, then this kind of helps prevent it from flipping over. But again, on a straight line, you're not going to be busting wheelies with this wheelie bar. It just doesn't have enough torque. Overall, I think it's really good value for someone who's just getting into the hobby and who doesn't have a brushless vehicle. I do like the clearance of this style of just a monster truck because you can go over terrain that you normally wouldn't be able to do. If you have long, hard grass, this still will not clear it. So that's just kind of something to note for a vehicle that's 1/16 scale. For $75 roughly, I think this is good to add to your collection if you're planning to have other guests or people who aren't as used to RCs driving with you. For that price, it's really good. If you are a seasoned RC enthusiast and you already have brushless vehicles and you have them bigger and you're always modifying, this is probably not going to be in your realm. But as a newbie like myself, I'm really glad I got this and glad to add it to the collection.